Hello everybody, this is Sister Lisa Marie Valentini. Very happy to be back with you here at Catholic FM Radio with our program None on the Run. With all of the shutdowns because of the coronavirus, it has been months. The last time that I was here was in February. So I'm very, very happy to be back here. Bill and I are here. Bill Getz, who runs the show, and myself. Greg, who is our normal host, is not here. And Kathy, she'll be in a little while. So it is a pleasure to be with you on this feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And as we begin with a prayer, as we always do, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And the prayer I chose for tonight is, I am gifted every year by a sister who's a good friend of mine with a book that puts the daily readings in and then has some meditations and some lives of the saints. It's called Give Us This Day. It's, I think it's by the same company that does Magnificat, but it's very nice. Anyway, in the beginning, they usually have some prayers and some reflections, and I thought I would share this one with you tonight. Prayer for the next time I meet Christ. I see them, Lord, every morning, standing on the same street corner. They hold their tattered signs, will work for food, with every bit of dignity they have. As I drive by, they raise their hand in blessing. I walk by them on my lunch break, leaning up against a wall, their few possessions tucked close by. A dirty hand reaches out in a sign of peace. Spare some change? They ask, as I avoid eye contact. God bless you is their answer to my silence. Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, a stranger and alone? When did we see you at all? Forgive me, God, for what I have done and for what I have failed to do. And I ask Blessed Mary, ever Virgin, all the angels and saints, and you, my brothers and sisters, whom I have passed by, to pray for me the next time I will stop to meet Christ. You know, we've been shut down for so long, and the homeless have become even more invisible to us. And so I think it's important for us to remember every night that we gather to eat in our convent home, we pray for those who are suffering because of what they don't have. We know, I bet every single one of you who are listening tonight know of someone who is out of work. My own nephew, my godson, just lost his job, and he and his wife and baby, soon to be 1 year old, they just bought a new house, and now he's out of work. And so we keep praying, we keep saying, God, what is the message that you are trying to call us to through all of this? I imagine, like me, you probably don't want to watch the news anymore, because every time it comes on, it's more, I don't know if I want to say bad news, it's weird news most of the time. It's just so strange. And like from the time that we've been here, such very sad things have happened in our country with protests and people being killed who shouldn't have been, and lootings and just so many things. And so I invite you tonight just to kind of reflect with us. Bill and I are going to talk a little bit. I have to share with you, I have really been grateful for this time. I'm supposed to be in Angola, Africa. I was supposed to leave in March. Needless to say, I'm still here, and I don't know when or even if that is going to happen this year, next year. God only knows. And what I keep praying for is God's will, God's will, God's holy will. But my life, as those of you who are regular listeners on our wonderful Catholic FM radio and have been with me before, you know that my life was a life of running, going all over the United States, speaking in churches, taking young people and not so young people on mission immersion experiences to the Dominican Republic. And believe me, every bit of that was blessing, and I had the blessing of being able to go to Mass every single day, of receiving Jesus every single day, until this happened. And then, even though I live only 100 yards from our mother house, which is Sacred Heart Villa in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's run by our sisters, the missionary sisters of the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus. And they have the blessing of having a priest, an MSC priest. So MSC, actually it's the Latin version, but anyway, Missionaries of the Sacred Heart, that's what it stands for. So we have a member of the male contingent of our community who lives in Sacred Heart Villa. We have men and women who live there, and then the sisters. And so because we have a priest, they had Mass every single day. And even though I only live 100 yards from there, I was not allowed in. I'm still not allowed in because it's a personal care home. And thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. From the beginning until now, we have not had one case of the coronavirus. But Father has been celebrating Mass every day. And so we couldn't go to Mass, the sister and I who live in the convent. And so we would watch on the computer, actually. And because we do have the blessing of having a chapel in our home, we have a tabernacle, and we were able to receive Jesus every day. But it's still not the same. It's not the same. And I want to share with you just, I have a book. It's Pope Francis. It's things that Pope Francis said. And just as churches are opening up again, I guess I know, and if you're older, and there's no obligation right now. There's no obligation to attend Mass. But I would hope that you are finding a way to participate in Mass, either on television or on the computer. And I'm going to do a little commercial here, because I have a cousin who's a priest, and he's a great priest. And honestly, he might be the best homilist I've ever met. And I'm not saying that because he's my cousin. I'm not. But he's excellent. This past weekend, when we heard the gospel of the seed, I love how the gospel begins. The sower went out to sow. It cracks me up every time. It just makes me laugh, because it goes, well, what else would he do? He's a sower. Of course he went out to sow. But what my cousin, in his homily, it was so beautiful. He talked about us and what seeds we are planting. And he started sharing. He just said, who planted what seeds? And he went and he said, when Boris Yeltsin was part of the dismantling of the USSR, they said, what inspired, what gave you the strength? What enabled you to do that? And he said, Lech Walesa, who of course was in Poland, and he's the one who started that whole solidarity movement. And then they asked Lech Walesa, who inspired him? And he said, Martin Luther King. And when Martin Luther King was asked who inspired him, he said Rosa Parks. And so we all are called to sow seeds. And when Monsignor Baddock was, asking questions, he said, who was Chopin's piano teacher? Or who was Einstein's second grade math teacher? Or who, like, each and every one of us, we are called to make a difference. And so, anyway, I'm going to encourage you. Monsignor Baddock's masses are on YouTube now. And you can find the link to them on their website, which is which is Notre Dame, ndbethlehemchurch.org. And either they're on, usually they're up by Sunday morning, or at least by Sunday a little bit later. And I really encourage you just to participate. But if you can go back to Mass, come back to Mass. Because of why? Because of the Eucharist. So that we can receive Jesus. This is what our Holy Father says. Dear friends, we don't ever thank the Lord enough for the gift He has given us in the Eucharist. It is a very great gift, and that is why it is so important to go to Mass on Sunday. Go to Mass not just to pray, but to receive communion, the bread that is the body of Jesus Christ, who saves us, forgives us, unites us to the Father. It is a beautiful thing to do, and we go to Mass every Sunday because that is the day of the resurrection of the Lord. That is why Sunday is so important to us. And so as we reopen, and people are fighting about reopening nail salons and gyms and hair dressing, and what about church? Isn't that the most important place that we need to be? Isn't that the most important gathering that we need to participate in, even if we have to sit 6 feet apart? Anyway, I was saying a little bit earlier that because I'm home, my prayer life has been better. I'm not doing so much running. Prior to this, most of my praying was done in the car. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just different. But now I get to spend a lot of time in our little chapel and hanging out with Jesus. And I also have been trying to just kind of listen to better things and watch better things. And I was listening. I imagine that probably all of you have heard of Father Mike Schmidt. Father Mike Schmidt he's just great. He's great with young people. He is a really good priest, and he preaches well. But one of the stories that I heard recently, and I will say that it really broke my heart. He was talking about China, and we are blessed because our sisters, we have a few sisters in China. We had sisters in China many, many years ago, and then they had to leave. But the only way that you can proclaim Christ in China is if you're Chinese. And so we had a few sisters who were there, and they were undercover nuns, so they weren't wearing a veil or any kind of habit. But they were living in such a way that these young women started asking questions. Who are you? Why are you so good to our people? And so the sisters invited them to come and see. And so we now have 4 Chinese sisters, which is awesome, and they're proclaiming Jesus Christ in their own country. But as you know, there was a long time when the Catholic religion was really underground. And so the story that Father Mike Schmitz was telling was about how the people would have Mass, they would hide, they would take care of the priests, they would have people on the lookout, and it was the most important thing for them. And so there was this man, and it was in his home where they celebrated Eucharist. And they got caught. He got caught. And so he was taken, and he was tortured. Tortured terribly. They wanted to know where the priest was. And this man, they did everything to him. And he would not ever divulge who the priest was, where he was, when they would have Mass. He would not divulge anything. And they couldn't believe it, because the tortures they did to him were terrible, and they couldn't break him. And then what happened? That man and his family ended up coming to the United States of America. And the man was able to get a job and become better at what he was doing. And so then he got busy. And he got to be too busy to go to Mass. Because why? Because he wanted to give his family a great life. He wanted his kids to have the best education. And so he worked, and then he worked more, and then it became that he was working 7 days a week and was not going to Mass. And what Father Mike said was, imagine what the tortures could not do was done here without any torture at all. My brothers and sisters, what are we doing? What seeds are we planting? And I know that Bill has something to say about the seeds too, because he had an experience in what he heard. But what seeds are we planting? What are we looking at? What are we allowing to steal our souls? This time of being in lockdown, are you careful about what you're watching on television? Or are you allowing yourself and your children to watch things that really we shouldn't be watching? How are you spending your time? Okay, Bill, come on in.
Well, there's so much. There's many good things on television, but there's just so much junk on television too. So I'm just going to stay back here because I'm having some issues here.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, it seems to be working now, but I just want to keep an eye on it. So you were talking about. I didn't want to give that whole sermon.
That's all right.
But it was a sermon that my pastor gave, and he talked about how a woman went into a shop, and she was never in this shop before. She saw this little shop. She thought, oh, that's a neat place. I have to check that out. And she went in, and she walked in the door, and she sees, it looks like Jesus behind the counter, and she's really nervous about it. She's wondering, should I ask him if he? No, it can't be. So finally, she worked up enough nerve, and she walked over, and she says, "Pardon me," she says, "Sir, are you Jesus?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And she struck up a conversation with him. She said, "Oh, I didn't know that you worked in this store." He said, "Well, I don't. I own this store." And she said, "Well, what do you sell here?" And he said, "Oh, we have just about everything that you could want." So he says, "Look around and see if there's something that interests you." So she walked down the aisles, and there was just aisles and aisles and aisles of things. Peace on earth, goodwill, friendship, love, clothing for people who have nothing, shelter for the poor who have no place to go. There was food for the people who were hungry. There was just everything and anything that you could imagine that would be a good thing to want. And so she made a list, and she walked up to the counter, and she says, "These are the things I'm interested in." She handed to Jesus this pretty lengthy list. And he looked at it, and he just smiled. And he said, "Oh, that'll be fine." So he went under the counter, and he pulled out a cardboard box, and he's ruffling through the box, and he pulls out a bunch of envelopes. And he sets them on the counter before her. And the woman said, "What's this?" He said, "Oh, these are seed packets." She says, "Seed packets?" He says, "Oh, yes, this is a catalog store, ma'am." He says, you have to plant the seeds. You have to nurture them. You have to care for them. You have to raise them. He says, and then other people will benefit from what you've done. And she says, I don't get to see the finished product. And he said, no, I'm sorry, you don't. And the lady put her head down and walked out of the store and didn't buy anything. And it just struck me as to how many people have, and it goes to even the parable that we just had with the weeds and the seed falling and, on good ground. And
yeah.
But how many times we really want to do good things, and we have that good intent in our hearts, but yet when we don't see results right away, we kind of give up on doing the right thing, because it's just it doesn't hold value for us. I don't know what it is. It just
maybe
I think we're too
we're
spoiled.
a little selfish. We're a little bit selfish, maybe.
We see too much instant gratification. I think it is. You can go to a grocery store here in the United States, buy anything you want within reason. I mean, now with this pandemic, things are a little bit different, but basically you can go buy anything you want. You can go out and eat if you want. You could do anything you want, as long as you have the means to purchase it. And so everything is just so instant. It's expected, and we expect that instant. Okay, I'm satisfied. I got what I wanted. Mm-hmm. But when we look at things from a point of doing the work and not ever knowing if it came to fruition, even though it's the right thing to do, mm-hmm. it changes. For so many of us, it just changes. It's, I don't know, is it not worthwhile? Is it? I don't know. Hmm. But it just it hit home with me so hard, thinking about how fortunate we are, how blessed we are, how much we have to offer, and yet we offer so little.
So true. And the thing is, every one of us is gifted, mm-hmm. And I know there's, again, going back to my cousin's homily and saying, who was Chopin's piano teacher? Now, I'm sure that he did not know when Chopin was when he was 7 years old. Like when he was 7 years old, I'm sure he didn't know who he was going to become, and so that I don't know. I guess I don't want to use the word obligation, because we don't like we're really funny when you say that. We're very funny. We don't like to be told what we should do, what we need to do, what we have to do. We want to do it because I want to do it. There's something about that.
Exactly.
Okay, but that we need to do the very best we can for everyone. I have given some teacher retreats, and I've come across this, I don't know who wrote it actually, but it's called The Parable of a Child. Mm. And it talks about a man, a teacher, who had a dream. And in the dream, he was told that someone that he taught was going to end up becoming a world leader and was going to change the world. And it touched him in such a way that he then taught differently. From that day on, he taught differently, because he didn't know which kid it was going to be, And eventually, there was a young woman, and she wasn't actually one of his students. It was his own daughter.
Oh, wow.
But she became a world leader, and his teaching is what allowed her to really change the world for the better. And so we have this ability within us, and I guess as we continue in this, I guess, unknown future, really right now, we don't know. We don't know when it's going to end, how it's going to end. We have people we care about who are suffering. Now, I have to say, I am very fortunate. My immediate family and the sisters, we've all been fine. But the sister of one of our sisters, she had the coronavirus, and it's been months, and she's still trying to recover. And so, okay. And that's one of the things that I say all the time to children when I'm working with them and giving a retreat or whatever. I tell them about my family, and I say, oh, I'm one of 6 kids. I said, but 1 boy, 5 girls. I said, but there were 6 girls. The girl who followed me, my sister, she died 2 days before her first birthday. And when I say that, of course, the kids feel bad. And I say, I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I said, I know it makes you feel bad. Of course it makes you feel bad because the baby died, all right? But I say, I'm not saying it to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because I need you to know that just because you're a sister or a priest or a deacon or a good Catholic, it doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen in your family. There's no magic here. But we have to live in such a way that we believe. Like, I know that my sister, who died 2 days before her first birthday, I know she's in heaven. And so, as hard as it must have been for my parents, we also have a family saint, which is pretty neat. And so, like this family, the sister whose sister had the coronavirus, they have several other things going on in the family that are very difficult right now. And so we keep praying, and it's beautiful to hear from them saying, we know your prayers are helping us. And so, like, you're home. Most of us are mostly at home, or you should be mostly at home. Please stay home.
Unless you're working.
Yes, unless you have to go to work. But to do things in a caring way, in the best way you possibly can. And to be kind, and to be thoughtful, and to be try to be patient with, your brothers and sisters. We've heard that domestic violence is up because everybody's home, and I guess sometimes we get on our last nerve or somebody else's last nerve. All right. So if you find yourself in a difficult moment, walk away. Go outside on the porch. Go to your room. Do something that you're not going to give in to doing something that would be mean or hurtful to somebody else.